Do you have I guess like any examples of like how bad surveillance is getting, or like things that people have missed, like why they should care because they're sort of walking around maybe naive? Is there anything that you would think like would be quite obvious, like an obvious reason why they should care, or why it's like
Yeah.
not just for criminals?
Yeah. So, like, I'll be honest, like, if I do get people asking me this stuff sometimes, and like, if they start talking about criminals and what was the other one? Terrorists, like, I tend to kind of
It's
stutter
right.
back
Yeah,
away
yeah,
because of the fact that it's like there's only so many people you can like
it's like a 15-year-old's perspective. It's kind of like I
well,
don't even want to.
it's just that there's some people that you can convince and that you can get on side, and there's some people that you can't convince, or at least I it's like that Satoshi saying, like, if you don't get it, I don't have time to explain, I'm sorry. It's like sometimes when people are so far deep into state morality,
Mhm.
there's no way that, like, me personally, by giving them the spiel about why privacy is important, is going to change their mind. But at the same time, like, even for those people who are like who do believe that uh what the state says is good, and what the state says is evil is like actually what good and evil is. For those people, like, they can still have a basic understanding that, like, until recently, privacy was basically the default of human life, and like, not just human, right? Like, all life was kind of unwatched, or just like unsurveilled. So it's only really recently, with the advent of like the World Wide Web and the internet, that, like, we've had this capability for widespread data collection and surveillance. So I feel like people are irrespective of the kind of the ethical problems that I see with the framing of the question about, like, good versus evil, and that the bad people should be watched or something. There's just this basic kind of general theme that, like, never existed before. That now everything, humans, like animals, like everything in the world, is now constantly monitored, and the information that's being harvested from that is being used to train AI megastructures that are going to, like, fundamentally alter the the nature of our world. And there's a very good book on this, which is Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff, which I would highly recommend for people to understand. She does a kind of, it's like two-part approach. One is like journalistic, where she tries to analyze, like, how do these companies like Facebook and Google, etc., operate? What is the kind of the real politics of surveillance capitalism? And then in the second half of the book, she analyzes, like, okay, but what's the ideology behind this? And both as both parts of the book are really good. Like, depending on what your interest is, you could just choose one or the other, or just read it all. It looks more intimidating than it is. It's actually quite a short book. Anyway, so in this book, she describes it really well. The whole economic paradigm of technology that we live in today is oriented around data harvesting and collection and analysis. Um, there's no concept of consent. Um, there's only, like, what I would see as theft, because of the fact that, thinking about it economically, this data has a lot of monetary value, but it's been taken from people without their knowing, and without, like, their consent in any way. So there's one basic aspect, I think, that everyone can understand, which is, like, the question of consent, especially if people realize that this thing is actually valuable. Like, people are profiting from their own behaviors online, they're not. Like maybe if they, even if they don't have the kind of critique that I share of like the way that the state kind of seizes people's ethical conscience and supplants it with like the false ethics of the state, even if they don't share that narrative, they can still understand, like, actually maybe I should be getting paid for this because I'm doing this online performance and for free, and everyone else is getting wealthy. Actually, it's creating incredible monopolies that have never existed before, and it's super powering these AI mega systems, which are also being used to like target people in drone assassinations and like other terrifying like weapons aspects or repercussions of this. So that's one side. The second thing is, yeah, I guess it's like, people may not be interested in AI or surveillance, but it is interested in them, and they are the subject of that surveillance. So, I think it's healthy for them to cultivate like an awareness of that. But finally, like the thing that like kind of my position would be is, and like, so that's like the basics, but to go a little bit like deeper and like more a bit more kind of to look into the problem more deeply. You mentioned this thing about society, and people being like, having their own, like people being mostly free, and then the state is this kind of apparatus that exists on top. So, we read a lot of the works of Abdullah Öcalan. He's like been a big influence on many of us on in DarkFi community. And his basic thesis is that you have society, which is like just like humans and in like the way that they are and how they interact. And then you have the state, and the state is basically a monopoly which extracts resources from society, and it separates society from its ability to defend itself, and also its ability to form its own moral and ethical paradigm, and not just to like create and nurture that paradigm, but also to put that paradigm into practice. So it basically seizes their ability to create ethical systems and to live those ethics through politics. So that's where I think the surveillance is really a problem, because surveillance is a mechanism of control that prevents people from having access to those mechanisms of power, like, or empowerment, such as like being able to live their own moral and political belief systems, like to be able to live that effect. So our critique is basically surveillance creates a kind of desert of homogenization where everyone is forced to submit to the same law. Anonymity enables like a forest of divergent communities where people are free to live their own moral and political destinies. So to imagine what are their ethical systems and also to live them politically. So that's the critical juncture that that anonymity gives.